And yes, you've basically given the summary of my whole presentation, so thank you for that. This is...
Thank you. You can come have a seat.
Thank you.
I'll tell you that. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm going to... It's a bit of a tricky topic to cover from a OSPAR perspective, because there's not strictly a mandate to work within MSP. But obviously, through its work, OSPAR produces, compiles, if you will, a lot of data to support the assessments. And that's obviously data that could be...
Maybe raise the microphone just a tad. There you go.
Sorry, it was my...
Sorry, I was very small.
I know you warned us.
You well enough in the back, yeah.
I'll try and stand still as well, not something I'm very good at. Yes, so there's obviously a wide variety of data that are available. And the intention is to show you through the procedure that OSPAR goes through in order to derive those data. So it's the whole sort of the background to it, and then how that supports the reuse going forward. Or not. Handily, because we were told not to use acronyms, and OSPAR not strictly being an acronym, I've summarized here. So it is a melding of these two conventions, the Oslo Convention and the Paris Convention, which came together, Oslo Convention covering marine pollution, and the Paris Convention prevention of marine pollution by discharges from land-based sources. Now, I think we've touched on land-based sources through some of the other presentations as well. The OSPAR maritime area. I've also actually included the enlargement area, which has not yet been ratified, but has basically there's an agreement that took place at the ministerial in 2025 to extend the OSPAR area. Now, there's direct overlap in Region 1 with the Arctic Council, and then we've got Region 2, which bumps up against the HELCOM area. So it's the OSPAR puzzle piece, if you will, in that global landscape there. So currently 13.5 million square K with 2.5 million square kilometres essentially on the way. So that's obviously a huge sea area, and there are data that go along with that. Now, sort of essentially starting from the most high-level position, if you will, the OSPAR's vision for the clean, healthy and biologically diverse Northeast Atlantic, and then so that's sort of the headline. And then underneath OSPAR are the 15 contracting parties, 16 including the European Commission, to deliver on the strategy, which is the acronym there, NAES, which is currently in effect running to 2030. So we have the convention text, we have the vision, we have the contracting parties, and we have strategy. So the strategy being implemented through high-level strategic objectives, broken down into operational objectives through to a level of implementation. I actually put this figure together for myself recently, but I've done a few of these presentations that it's helped people make sense of the outline of how OSPAR works. So, as I was saying, we have the convention text at the top, which is the convention text, basically doesn't change. And then we have the strategy, which is outlining those strategic objectives, implementation objectives that I showed on the previous slide. Now, if we take which way are we going? This way, which I guess would be your left, over to the JAMP, the Joint Assessment and Monitoring Programme. So this is where we start to get our heads together. So contracting parties know what's in the strategy, and then they describe the themes and products that are needed in order to answer the questions that are raised in the strategy. So it's sort of a next level of detail, if you will. Then keep going down that thread there, you get to the SEMP. These have only got one name, but by the way, there are a lot of documents that obviously fit underneath these things, which is why you told me to take those slides out. So then we've got the SEMP, and then that's, again, next level of detail. So this is how do we get comparable monitoring data in order to answer those questions that have been raised. Again, this is contracting parties getting their heads together and agreeing on comparable monitoring methodologies so that we can create these, I say create's probably the wrong word, but develop these assessments to produce the outcomes to answer the questions. And we keep going down, we have SEMP guidelines. So this is the real detail. So this is my favorite bit down here. We've got the real detail on monitoring assessment methods, what needs to be delivered, and where does it need to go, the core detail of things. And then down into reporting formats and guidance, this is your Excel spreadsheets, your shapefiles, where they need to go, who's in charge. An honourable mention there on the side step to SEMP appendices. So this is basically a distilled version of what's in a guideline. And this is what gets carried forward for things like MSFD reporting, because it basically captures the summary of the monitoring. So I think that's Article 11 of the MSFD monitoring programs. Also want to quickly highlight on the other side, can't remember, right side, the NAES implementation plan. So it's also to acknowledge that it's a strategy, it's over a long time, things are going to change, or other things are going to rise. So it's in place to adapt and adjust according to how the implementation is going. The aforementioned reporting format. So this is just an example. So we've been through all this procedure, and then this is exactly how the data are requested to be delivered. And again, this is all, it comes from the bottom up from the experts, it comes from the top down based on what needs to be delivered. And then this is where the data and the structures, I think this is an example of so this data stream is managed by JNCC in the UK, but the data themselves are presented via eModNet seabed habitats. So the combinations are starting to come together. So there are roughly 40 data streams. So data stream being a high level, for example, you may not be able to make it out there, but it's got abundance of distribution of cetaceans, but within that there are probably sub data sets. Bottom right is under development, documentation of all of the attributes for all of the data sets. So basically taking all of that content from the reporting formats, publishing it in a single place, but also allows us to look for easy wins in terms of coherence between fields and things like that. So we can go all the way from the strategy to the detail there. And also there is OSPAR Data and Information Management Strategy to 2030, which supplements the NAES strategy in essence, or looks to enact the data activities that were put in the strategy. But again, that also has a element baked into it to allow a feedback loop based on what's happening and developments that are required along the way. And then publication. I mean, there's obviously a whole raft of work in between all these steps, but this is the point where the user can come in and get the data. So it's on ODIMS. The contracting parties agreed to a Creative Commons 0 license, which is, I think, as open as you can get. But it also makes policing of the data manageable, because there are two of us at the Secretariat dealing with the data, so you can't always follow up on the data policing. Now, within ODIMS, each submission, we call them, what you can see there in that sort of horizontal bar, is an individual package. It's done that way because the reporting formats can change year on year. So baking in a big database wasn't seen as being achievable when ODIMS was launched some 10 years ago. So they kind of split into these individual packages of data, metadata as well, and on occasion, non-spatial data. I don't know how many times I've clicked. Lucky number 4. Okay, I left this in purely as if the presentations get shared, then I always add links and things, because I know it's a nightmare to try and find some of these pages sometimes. But that's a rough breakdown of, it's not rough at all, is it? There's a breakdown of how the page is laid out, but most importantly being the download links, sort of mid-page. But you can see the dataset history, this accumulation of dates in the middle. So you can click through and see at relatively basic level how the dataset has changed over time. There's not any slidey bars, unfortunately, but it's at least lets you get a visual on the change over time. And yeah, with the option to embed based on WMS and OGC compliant web services. Also a mapping function in there as well, so you can click the icon just at the bottom of that first curved arrow, and it puts them all into this map interface, and it also creates this URL, which is just an amalgam of the layers that it's made of. So then you can take that and you can send it to somebody else. So you're talking about the same thing. You're singing from the same song sheet, essentially. Now, we rely quite heavily on web services, within ODIMS. So we take incoming services, because not all data streams are managed by the Secretariat, so it allows us to draw them in. You can see ICs, eModNet, the MPA there, because that was hosted by a French agency. So we can draw those data in. We're not duplicating anything. It stays there, it's being managed, and then it can be drawn in, so it can be in that central portal for everybody to find. And then similarly, coming back out, the web services are there for all of the content that was within ODIMS to be reused. I dabbled with potentially removing this slide, but it kind of gives the overview of how important the integration of all the different data sources are. Because we have the IC services at the top, we've got the Copernicus data coming in, but there's a provision of at least 3, if not more, OSPAR common indicators, aside from FW2, which is candidate, apologies. But we can create those indicators based on this flow of data. Now, there's also a parallel site called the OSPAR Assessment Portal, where basically anything that's not data is published. And there's also the underlying link between the two, because obviously if you have an assessment, you want to be able to find the underlying data. And then when it comes to things like pre-filling for MSFD and ReportNet, then the links are all there back to the source. And
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chris. Follow-up questions for Chris Moulton. I have one. Is it more of a challenge to manage the coordination between different data sets than it is to actually collect data? And I asked that question not facetiously. I'm interested in understanding what, on a day-to-day basis or on a monthly basis, what is more time-consuming? What is more the expertise? Is it coordination of data, or is it actually in-situ data collection or data analysis through satellite, et cetera? I'm interested in that and in understanding, kind of the day-to-day expertise that you have.
It's always tricky because it's obviously very perspective-based, because there's hopefully reflected the huge volume of work that's happened over time to basically support the reuse of the data that it costs so much effort to gather in the first place.
Yeah.
That laying the foundation of having the structure, it's all of the preferences, the differences they've been thrashed out in the process, so that hopefully everything that's gathered and collected is then is maximized. The reuse is then maximized. I couldn't comment on the effort that it takes to gather the data themselves, but with anything, if you've got a multiplier of 15 countries with however many agencies that are involved under that as well, with however many experts, I think it's a huge undertaking, irrespective of what position you come in at.
Thank you, Chris Moulton. Please have a seat next to Nathalie Tonnet here. Oh, I see a question in the back. Yeah, of course. Thank you, Laurence, my best colleague with circulation of the microphone. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Chris, for this nice presentation, very technical. OSPAR has also other groups that deals with human activities, and I'm thinking to HEA. Could you comment how HEA could provide relevant information for maintaining MSP?
I mean, like you say, AHA is responsible for human activities work within OSPAR. It's an interesting one because actually the offshore renewable energy development sites are within eModNet human activities as well. So I don't know whether any of the content that's used via other methods is already being used, but I would say, as with anything within OSPAR, it's driven by the contracting parties. So if there's a need, a desire for the function for, I don't know, like you say, working within MSP, then that's where contracting parties can step in and say, this is a priority, this is something we need to do, and then it can get taken up, because it is just all of the countries together, right, in the same place. So, yeah, it would be via that sort of procedure, as you say, within OSPAR.
Thank you, Chris.